Please skim the article, The Influence of Personal and Workplace Resources on New Graduate Nurses' Satisfaction by Stam, Lashinger, Reagan, and Wong. It has been posted on Canvas under Module 9. The purpose of the study was to test a model examining the combined effect of organizational resources, empowerment and staffing adequacy, and personal resources, psychological capital, on new nursing job satisfaction. The researchers defined empowerment, structural empowerment, as access in the work environment to services that enable their employees to accomplish work in a meaningful way. For example, opportunities for advancement and skill and knowledge development. Staffing adequacy was seen to be enough personnel for the nurse to be able to provide effective patient care. Psychological capital consisted of 4 components: self-efficacy, hope, optimism, and resiliency. Job satisfaction was defined as the relationship between what one wants from the job and what one perceives the job to be offering. The design of this study was a predictive correlational one in which the researchers sent out surveys to nurses who had been working less than 3 years in the profession in Ontario, Canada. A survey was sent to 392 nurses, and 205 usable ones were returned. Psychological capital was measured using the psychological and capital questionnaire consisting of 24 questions rated on a Likert scale from 1, strongly disagree, to 6, strongly agree. It measured hope, optimism, and resiliency. Conditions of Work Effectiveness questionnaire was used to measure the new nurses' perception of the structural empowerment in their workplace. Adequate staffing was measured by 1 question. In the past month, how often has short staffing affected your ability to meet your patients' needs? The answers were rated 1, never, 2, monthly, 3, weekly, 4, several times a week, and 5, daily. To create a positive measure of staffing adequacies, the scores were reverse scored. Job satisfaction was measured using a 5-point Likert scale from 1, strongly disagree, to 5, strongly agree. Looking at Table 2 on your slide, you can see the results of the relationships between the variables. Down the far left-hand column, the variables of 1, psychological capital, 2, structural empowerment, 3, staffing adequacy, and 4, job satisfaction are listed. The numbers of 1 to 4 across the top of the table are equivalent to the variables listed on the left-hand side. For example, 1 is psychological capital, etc. Looking at the bottom of the table, you can see an asterisk by a result means that a significant p-value of less than 0.05 exists, and 2 asterisks means that a significant p-value of less than 0.01 exists. Now, read across row 2, structural empowerment, and down the column labeled 1, psychological capital. And where they intersect, it shows that a correlation of 0.15 exists, and that it is significant at the p less than 0.05. Now, read across row 3, staffing adequacy, and down the column labeled 1, psychological capital, and at their intersection, a significant correlation of 0.12, p less than 0.01 exists between them. Reading further across the same row, and down the column labeled 2, you will see a significant correlation of 0.16, p less than 0.01 exists between staffing adequacy and structural empowerment. Finally, read across row 4, job satisfaction, and down the column labeled 1, psychological capital, and at their intersection a significant correlation of 0.30 or p less than 0.01 exists between them. Reading further across the same row and down the column labeled 2, you will see a significant correlation of 0.55, p less than 0.01 exists between job satisfaction and structural empowerment. Reading further across row 4, job satisfaction, and down the column labeled 3, staffing adequacy, you will find a significant correlation of 0.29, p less than 0.01 exists between them. This entire chart shows the relationships between two variables at one time. Now we've moved to the third slide. Which will look at how psychological capital, empowerment, and staffing adequacy are able to predict job satisfaction. If you add one variable at a time to the model, you can see how much of the variances is explained by each addition. For example, reading across the line under Module 1 that includes only psychological capital, the R squared reads 0.09, meaning that only 9% of the variance is explained. Also notice that under the adjusted R squared, the number of 0.09 remains the same since there is only one variable. Now looking at Model 2, you can see that psychological capital and empowerment together explain 35% of the variance in job satisfaction, with empowerment adding an additional 26% to Model 1. Finally, looking at psychological capital, empowerment, and staffing adequacy altogether, Model 3, they explain 38% of the variance in job satisfaction, with staffing adequacy adding only an additional 3% to Model 2. Keep in mind that all of these models have a significant p-value of p 0.001. In my mind, if I were a manager and wanted to increase the amount of job satisfaction in the new nurses that I hire, I would make sure that the ability to advance or learn new skills would be available to them, since it seems to add the most to explain job satisfaction.